Hello and welcome. This is episode 15 of Inner Whispers Radio. My name is Alan. I'm the host. The show, as always, features a full-body, open, deep trance channel and best-selling author named April Crawford, who will speak first about something, and then we'll invite in Veronica, who is our name for a causal plane entity that we've been working with for years, among many others, but Veronica's the one who knows how to handle the phone, work the computers. She's totally cool with this century. Anyway, I'm going to hand the phone to April.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to continue from where I left off last week on this past life run that we had a transcript of from 1989, and I've never read any of the transcripts of the stuff we did back in those times. So I started reading this one, and it was pretty interesting. I mean, I think I told you last week about the first part of it, and about being on the ship and being in the crow's nest and having my finger cut off and all that good stuff. Last week, I think we left off where I fell out of the crow's nest during a storm, and I fell into the water. And to reiterate, I am deathly afraid of water. I mean, I can swim marginally, but when I was a kid and stuff, you couldn't get me near the water. You want me to put my face in the water? Forget it. I'm out of here. I can remember my mom putting me in swim lessons, and I took one lesson. I said, I'm not doing this anymore. And my mother could never figure out, what my problem was, and I never really knew either. I said I just didn't like the water. And when we were doing this past life run, it came up that I fell out of a crow's nest into the water and drowned. And the in-between part in the transcript is kind of interesting. My friend Pam, was sort of leading the questions, and Alan, of course, was there, and another fellow named Ryan. And when I fell out of the crow's nest, it's interesting that I just basically thought I was breathing water, and everything was in slow motion, and I moved into a state where I said, I said, I want to live. And my friend Pam says, you want to live? And I said, yeah, I want to live. I hit the water, something goes wrong, I can't feel anything, I can't move. Surprisingly, it doesn't hurt. Everything is suddenly very quiet, and I cannot move, though. The water is in my eyes, and that hurt. And she says, do you stop struggling? I said, no, I scream, but no one hears me, of course. There was a moment of satisfaction when I saw the captain, as I bobbed up and down, I saw the captain fall into the water, and he died. So that was one moment of respite for me in that particular thing. And I was asked if I was still in pain, and I said no. And he says, well, where are you? I'm under the water. And what happened is that I move ahead. My friend Pam moved me ahead, and suddenly I was in a room. And it said all of the me's are in the room, and we're all comparing notes. And I kept saying there's so many me's, and we're all in agreement, but there's difficulty because we're trying to figure out what we're going to do next. And I find it just really interesting that the acknowledgement of there being so many me's. And it all gets decided, and we have agreements, and they move me then through into another lifetime. And the lifetime, the issue was loyalty. And what it was in in Spain, where the Inquisition was going on. And I guess in that lifetime, Alan and I and my friend Pam were in that part of the world, and we were, I guess, really psychic and intuitive and probably doing some channeling in a time where if you weren't, of the Catholic faith, or you were even just like trying to be Protestant, there was big problems from the Catholic Church. And I couldn't, when I was told about this, and then when I was reading this, I couldn't believe that I would have, issues of betrayal with these three people that I was working with at that time. But apparently, I was the one who betrayed Alan. In that lifetime, the one in Spain during the Inquisition, Alan and I were brother and sister. And apparently there was leak a leak in the system where they found out that we were doing these kinds of psychic things and channeling things, which of course was a big no-no. And apparently they had put a garrote around my neck, and I ratted Alan out. I said, oh, no, you don't want me. You want him. I pointed the finger at my brother, and his name was Dominic at the time. And so, of course, they dropped me for the moment. They went to Alan, and apparently the public executions weren't all that fun. And what this transcript says is that I became extremely hysterical because what they did is that they burned Alan's feet off, or Dominic's feet off. And I was just devastated that I betrayed him in that way. And, of course, they ended up garroting him and killing him as well. And this was all done right in front of me. I lived for the rest of that life. Now, why they didn't kill me too, I don't know. But what happened was that Alan's powers went into me. What he could do went into me. So I had to live the rest of the life knowing that I could do this, and I could do it even better because Dominic gave it to me. And it was quite traumatic. I mean, from the way the transcript was and what from Alan tells me, because he was there, I really wasn't. I was in Spain. And I was hysterical, thinking I had betrayed my brother. He died horribly. I had to go through the rest of the life thinking about it, being in remorse. It wasn't a great life. And when I moved out of that life, I was hysterical. And Pam and Alan were worried that, I was getting a little bit too over the top, too much over the edge, and Pam really wanted to bring me back. But Alan kind of talked me through that. And come to find out, I was hysterically crying. And then, like with the snap of the fingers, I was in between lives again and became just very, very calm, very, very knowing of what had happened and not hysterical anymore. And I think there's tapes of it somewhere. I'm not sure. I think we do have a tape. But I'm looking at the transcript and moved through the life and just went in between lives again and lost all the hysteria. When I came back, I kind of knew something had gone on, but I didn't really know all of it because I really did become who I was in that lifetime. Couldn't remember it. I think probably because it was so traumatic, I probably just didn't remember, but everyone told me about it afterward. And doing past life runs, we think we did that a lot. I think we did that a lot. And it was always very fascinating and interesting, but this one was the one that Alan decided to put into a transcript, and I think he did it himself. He was very industrious in his youth and did this. So I'm glad he did because I have been told about it peripherally, but to read it and read the words and read the emotion in the words, it was pretty impactful. And it looks like as you come into each life, there are issues that come up, and that issue was about loyalty. In this life, we got married, so I guess we did have to sort of resolve the loyalty issue. But past life runs can be fun. So if you have any interest in it, you should attempt it if you have a group of friends that wants to participate in such a thing and take somebody through it. From what Alan and Pam and Ryan tell me, taking me through a past life run was tedious because I was usually very vividly present where I was. It wasn't like some vague thing. I was like became who I was in that life. So hopefully you'll have someone in your group like that to make it exciting and actually kind of fun and extremely interesting. So anyways, I'm going to turn it back over to Alan, and so I can bring Veronica in.
Thank you, April. Yeah, we did a few past life regressions in the early days. One I'll just mention because it had a great line where it was April in the Civil War, United States Civil War, and it was a fairly unremarkable life. I mean, especially when she died like as an old woman or something with no accomplishments. But we started when she was a kid, and the greatest line I took from that was when I was talking to her. She said, "We had a cannonball came right through our barn." It was amazing. But that's the level of detail. I'm talking about local knowledge local accents. And another time I asked, well, did you go to high school? And it's like, well, it's high school, that kind of thing. Okay, so now I am waiting for Veronica. Notice how I'm segueing here. And she is here, and I just turned my iPhone back on so I could read Bob's question. And that is, thank you, Veronica. Again, you have stated that past lives, future lives, present lives are all happening at the same time. I would have to assume, parentheses, this means that in one of those instances, for lack of a better word, we all have already achieved our goals and learning and have reached that perfect divinity, comma, correct? Question mark.
Hello, it is Veronica. You had the perfect perception of divinity when you started. It isn't about the divinity part. It's about the experience part. And you were divine when you began, you were divine in the midst of it, and you are divine at the end of it. So that's not in question. What is important to recognize here is that it is the energy and the experience of that energy that helps the divine part of you have a more clear vision and experience while participating in linear reality.
Okay, Veronica, now we have a couple, maybe 3 questions from the same person. What is her name? Her name is Kathy, with a K. And she wants to know about angels. And I must make a comment, of course. Veronica now giving me a little look. I get to do editorial comments occasionally because I can tell you that I've talked to dozens and dozens of different entities and non-physical beings, including angelics and source entities, and none of them, 0, use the word angels. The only time that angels are ever mentioned, if Veronica happens to talk to somebody who's very, steeped in a religion, and it's just easier than explaining what angelics are, which maybe we'll do now. They all refer to themselves, including themselves, as angelics. And they're basically, if you want to go to the source entity level, Veronica has 3 different categories, which we'll talk about later, but maybe one is a root entity, which really is into physical reality, wants to know everything about it, like everything, like being a rose, that level of it. Others are what she calls angelics, which are completely different. And then there's others which are ethereal, and they dwell they incarnate, but they also spend a lot of time non-physical. And for those who are wondering, Veronica is part of the root entity class. So anyway, Veronica, this person would like to talk about angels and what I would call angelics.
Angelics are a species like humans are. They have a different frequency, which makes them not so able to adhere to the gravitational pull that the planet provides. Therefore, they are usually elevated off the ground a bit, which is why they're depicted in biblical texts as being winged creatures. They don't have wings. They are merely lighter than air and are elevated off the ground. And the only way early scribes could describe them was to depict them as being elevated off the ground, because how else would they do it? The angelics do take an interest in humans. They do have the ability to participate at those higher frequencies and often are very telepathic and very psychic in how they do things. We have many who say, I was in a car accident. I felt like there was somebody showed up. I think it was an angel that showed up. It could have been Gabriel. It could have been Michael. Some angelic showed up and saved me from being smushed in my car, which I should have been. But miraculously, I was not. And we say, yes, they do show up. They do take an interest in different individuals. They do have a very open heart towards humanity and wish to be of service and help whenever they can. They always feel empathy very deeply. They always are able to perhaps see into a future element a bit. So if they see something is happening that can be circumvented if someone were just to insert themselves into it, they do it. So yes, the angelics are deeply interested, and they do have abilities, but it is because of their high frequency. They don't adhere to the gravitational pull, and by not adhering to it, they are able to also see things more clearly than perhaps a human could.
Thank you, Veronica. And I will add, highly individual, angelics and all entities, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit later. But for instance, I talked to angelic. Now, Gabriel's unbelievable, but Titus, he threw me halfway across the room physically because he was a warrior essence, and I tend to be obnoxious sometimes, and he was very combative. Now, I absolutely believe that he came through to help me in some way because I provoked thought. But I'm just saying that don't paint everybody with the same brush. Angelics and all entities are highly individual, and why not? So here's some more questions, which I have to get back on my iPhone because it keeps turning off. This question is, does a source hear our prayers, and does this bother them?
All energy hears all beseeching from those who are physical, and no, it is not a bother. Those who are of a higher perspective all have within them a deep empathy and a deep feeling for those who are incarnate. Some of them have been incarnate and realize the pitfalls and the difficulties of that. We would say, never fear that your words and your thoughts and the beseeching that you seek from those who are in a higher frequency is going upon what one would say is deaf ears. There is always empathy. They feel it, they pay attention to it, and are certainly not bothered by it at all.
Okay. Now, the two more questions, and these fall into the category, and I'm a business guy, so you're going to hear some straight, blunt talk that turns most people off. But there's a category of subjects and questions that I put in this category. Opinion stated as fact. And, opinions are opinions and facts are facts. But here's one of those with which I disagree. It says, it seems we must all suffer. So, Veronica, do you agree we must all suffer?
Suffering is a choice. Suffering has many definitions. It is not necessary to suffer. But some feel in their own minds that if they are suffering, then that means that they are cleansing their soul, so to speak, so that they can, rise above into another element. It is not necessary to suffer. It's a choice, just like anything else. So if you're in a situation where you feel like you are suffering, make sure you examine it carefully to make sure you're not letting any of that through the cracks, because you can evolve joyfully just as much as you can evolve suffering. Choice.
Okay, and then another opinion stated as fact, keeping with the suffering theme. I'm now getting looks from Veronica because she thinks I'm not even allowed to talk. Why must wild animals suffer? Again, I agree. I disagree. I have animals all over this place, and a lot of them are wild, and they are not suffering. I'm telling you, when I see eagles and hawks and stuff, and watch documentaries on Alaska, they're not suffering. So they must suffer, in my opinion.
The suffering of animals, whether they are domesticated, feral, wild, we think in the wild it is their own journey. And just like a human, they could choose to suffer. Wild animals do have the ability to make choices. Now let's talk about those who are feral, dogs, cats, and the suffering that goes on with that. Dogs and cats and other domesticated creatures are great teachers. They often put themselves in positions of difficulty so that the humans that they are involved with can become more evolved themselves by allowing themselves to help with their dilemma. And perhaps sometimes they suffer so they can teach others to know that they can be of service and be helpful to those who are suffering. So we'd say that the domesticated animals are here to help humans evolve, and a lot of times they put themselves in harm's way. They're very evolved, and they understand exactly what they're doing. The wild animals, not so much. So we would say the suffering of animals is different from place to place, but all animals are here to assist humans in their experience.
Thank you, Veronica. And now maybe apparent to most of you who have listened to all of these that I'm completely prepared most of the time, and today I brought in the wrong list. But yet we're live on the radio, so that should be interesting. So I'm going to ask Veronica some questions based on some other notes that I have. And it is, why is it important to follow your heart as opposed to your mind? Or is the intellect and the heart, should they both receive equally?
Yes. Following your heart is a phrase that has been coined in physical reality and in the human culture to follow how something feels. And they use the word heart. You're also taught in a metaphysical way that thought creates reality. The thing that needs to be done is a unification between how you feel and how you think. They are both very useful tools because what you think becomes reality, and how you feel propels that thought in a positive or negative way. So it is important for the heart and the mind to be in a cohesive partnership. And some will say, well, I don't do well with emotion. And then they'll have someone who say, well, I'm so emotional, I just don't even have a thought in my head. I don't know how I'm going to create my reality. We'd say if you're very heartful and very emotional, hold on to that and attempt, if you can, to bring some thought into the decision-making that your feelings bring forward. And if you're all in your head and emotion is very difficult for you, you need to decide that, okay, I'm going to be doing my thinking, but I'm also here and there going to bring a little emotion in and allow myself to feel. Now, for some of you who aren't emotional, that will take a great deal of practice. The unification between feeling and thinking is a valid one. So wherever you're at, whether you're a thinker or whether you're a feeler, attempting to merge the two, even if it's just slightly, is a good idea.
Thank you, Veronica. And I could say I'm part of the intellect, non-emotional crowd. And a long time ago, I was talking to an entity, I think my source entity, and said that one of the things I should be working on is to express and receive emotion more freely, which I never did. And then poker face on acid, right? So I can say, though, as I've gained more and more experience in this physical life, I am becoming more appreciative of emotion. And at first I thought I was becoming emotionally unstable because I just said that. I'm becoming more empathically sensitive and appreciating things that I didn't never appreciate before. And it's on an emotional basis, and it's a very interesting experience for me in any event. Veronica, you said one time that it's a good idea to forgive and release. Segue back to the conversation about the Spanish Inquisition. Obviously, April and I have done that, even though she ratted me out and I was, burned at the stake, which is so great. So why is it important to forgive and release?
Forgiveness releases you from the binding difficulty that holding on to dramatics that have occurred that were negative can have upon you. If you hang on to something and you don't forgive, then that energy churns inside of you through the rest of the life and can color other participations that you are involved with. Forgiving someone doesn't mean you're going to let them in to give them another opportunity if they are in a pattern of doing such things. But forgiving releases you from the binding energy that their participation brought. You're going to let it go. You're going to say, I forgive you. I'm not going to forget, but I'm going to forgive you. And move forward without carrying the participation, the negative participation that you brought to the table along with you. I'm not going to carry that baggage. I forgive you because assuming in that forgiveness that you are indeed a divine energy and that you made some inappropriate choices that compelled you to enact something that had negative impact upon me. I forgive you for that. But I'm also going to remember that you do have a propensity for that and be mindful of that in the future. But letting go of indiscretions, bad energy, someone who maybe has harmed you, forgiving them releases you as well as releases them and allows you to move forward without that energy coloring any other event you have in your life.
Thank you, Veronica. And now it is time for me to hand the phone to Veronica, this message to you and to the world.
Decide to embrace your day and decide to embrace it from an open, relaxed kind of vision. Most of you are very stressed out. Most of you are feeling the negativity of others around you. Decide that you're going to provide yourself with the opportunity to let go of all that. Decide that today is going to be better. Spend some physical linear time with just you and make it a positive one. Now, all of you in your day can probably scrape up a 15-minute moment that's all yours. Go to a favorite spot, go to a comfortable spot, and sit and allow your energy to expand outward and make it all very positive. And then gather to you all the positive energy that's available around you. Do not gather the negative energy around you. Leave that to sit by itself. Perhaps it will smolder and the fire of it will go out if you ignore it. And let yourself be in the present moment, be happy with who you are, and decide that this is indeed a good day.
Thank you, Veronica. And as I like to say, that concludes the interesting part of this radio broadcast and podcast. If you would like to find out more information about Veronica or April Crawford, you can try aprilcrawford.com. Same thing if you would like to talk to Veronica one-on-one. And by the way, I leave the office because I would get kicked out if I did not. It's one-on-one. It's private. So you can find out more information at aprilcrawford.com or amazon.com. And thank you, and we'll see you next time.